Now guys, you know I have been a huge fan of the iCarly revival series. Every episode has provided at least something good to great in terms of laughter and even storytelling. And this week's episode, episode 9, is the exception. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and I promise we're not going to be entirely negative, but I gotta be honest about this week's episode of iCarly, episode 9. Its title is iMLM, and it's directed by Phill, Lewis, and stars, if you've forgotten, Miranda Cosgrove as Carly, Trainor as Spencer, Nathan Kress as Freddie, Laci Mosley as Harper, and Jaidyn Triplett as Millicent. Now again, I love this revival series, and I need to preface that because I don't want someone to click on this and think, oh my god, he hates iCarly. No, this is one of the best reboot revival-esque series that we've gotten in a very long time, and I do think that every episode at least has one or two things that you can take away and say this was good to even great. But unfortunately in episode 9, guys, they do go the other way. Now we will dive into what works a little bit and what doesn't work too much about this week's episode, but before we get into that, if it is your first time here at the channel, welcome to Real James, where I talk about movies and TV like this early all the time. So if you don't want to miss out, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and tap on that bell. Guys, hit that thumbs up button if you've also been a fan of this revival series, and get loud down below and let me know what you thought of episode 9. Do you think it's one of the better episodes? Does it fall in the middle? Or is it one of the worst episodes of the season so far? Alrighty guys, so let's get into this review and recap. The episode opens up with Freddie taking on a new job. He is now tech support, and there's a little funny gag in that cold open, and of course we get a very deep conversation as well between Miranda Cosgrove and Trainor. So Spencer and Carly, these siblings that we love so much, are talking about how Spencer is not a good listener. And I thought, you know what, Spencer, I've been working on that too, but you know, I wouldn't say I'm a terrible listener or even a bad listener, but Spencer is a bad listener. So of course Carly tries to give him some tips, and well, Spencer doesn't listen. And then you start to see the seeds being planted, right? We start to hear about Carly going on a date or meeting up with an ex-boyfriend by the name of Griffin, who you might remember from the original series, and Harper kind of tells her that maybe this isn't a good idea, but she doesn't really stop Carly. And speaking of Harper, she has a very important interview with a stylist, and I think that's actually a pretty cool little bit of character development for Harper. She's starting to branch out and getting into what she loves. But overall, I will say, guys, this is one of the weaker, if not the weakest, cold opens of the season so far. Not a lot of laughs, not a lot to really sink your teeth into, but again, it's the cold open, so give me the title card and let's get into the episode. Everything should be uphill from here, right? Well, the proof is in the sand, and I use that very bad pun because Griffin is selling sand, this product that is apparently supposed to make you feel better and less stressed. Now, I thought right away, guys, this is definitely a pyramid scheme, and we do get that confirmed at the end, that whatever Griffin is trying to sell is getting people to be a part of a marketing scheme. Well, who buys into it? Carly, and definitely Freddie. Now, I don't want to go away from Griffin just yet, because I remember in the original series, I think Carly put him on blast for being someone who loves Beanie Babies. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but Griffin's acting in this episode is very weird. It's almost like he's trying to be too awkward, but his awkwardness doesn't equate to humor like Miranda Cosgrove's awkward humor. So both of them don't really gel, and maybe that is the intention, but I did not think Griffin's acting helped this episode at all. And when talking about cameos, guys, Griffin's cameo probably was the weakest, but we're moving on from that and getting into, well, Millicent wanting a puppy. Now, this is very interesting. This episode handles Millicent's subplot in a very weird way. I mean, we're very familiar with iCarly's structure, right? You have the main story, and then you have a couple layers that sort of deal with characters and what they're doing outside of that main plot. And Millicent here is trying to convince Freddie that they need a dog, and sets up this funny presentation. It was actually the funniest and most clever bit of writing in the entire episode, where she shows Freddie a very old presentation because she says this is how he can understand how badly she wants a dog, and I thought it looked really, really funny. But the episode never really goes back to that, and only briefly touches on Millicent wanting a dog towards the end of the episode, but man, it just was lackluster, and honestly, the entire story wasn't very compelling. And I'm talking about everything. All the storyline threads in this episode were not very compelling, because I just don't think it's as funny as the other episodes, so when there are moments where you get a little bit of a lull, you don't get a lot of humor to kind of pick it up, and the momentum is not really ever there. I actually don't even think this episode created enough momentum to carry for 24 minutes anyway. And they try to save face at the end where Carly offers Freddie a chance to guest spot on iCarly to sell the remainder of his sand. And then we find out that sand is fish food, which would tie into a joke where Millicent accidentally feeds her goldfish sand in the previous scene, but still nothing is sort of gelling. Everything sort of seems like it's clashing against one another, and none of the story beats really complement the episode. And once we get the big reveal that, well, sand is just a social commentary on pyramid schemes, I was really underwhelmed because, guys, we've seen this before, and as someone who almost got pulled into a pyramid scheme, I was smart about it. Don't worry, I never actually committed. I do think that this episode overall really is just a filler episode by the exact definition. And listen, I'm not unfamiliar with that. In the original series, we had filler episodes, but I do think this is one of the more forgettable episodes of the entire season, and to me this is the worst episode yet. This is worse for me than I Apologize, which is episode 3 if I'm not mistaken, and I don't think that episode 9 is a good place for where it does fall in the season. We only have 13 episodes this season, right? So we're getting into that final chunk, and episode 9 maybe could have came a lot earlier in the season where hopefully we wouldn't really remember, but it coming at the end, I just don't think that this is going to really excite me for the following week. Now, am I optimistic? Absolutely. And will I still be in my seat for episode 10? Yes. But episode 9 for me was a very weak episode. And I'm actually pretty disappointed that there wasn't even a bit of follow-up to last week's episode. I love a lot of the character development we got with Freddie last week, and here he just seems like a placeholder. It's just so frustrating because I can't wrap my head around how this episode didn't really perform well, especially considering we had a strong run of episodes right after episode 3 all the way up to about now, where we kind of have this weird stop in momentum for the season, and it doesn't make me worried for the rest of the season. But what I will say is that I think that this is one episode that they could have done away with, and hey, if we got 12 episodes this season and this was the odd one out, okay, fine, but I just didn't think that this was a very good episode, and honestly, it's not up to par with what we got previously in season 1 of the iCarly revival. So there you have it, you guys. That's my real review of episode 9, iMLM, and I promise I'm never looking at sand again the same. It better not be in my drink, it better not be in my food, or in my shoes. But again, you guys, if you don't want to miss out on my coverage for iCarly next week, go ahead and hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those bell notifications. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit the big thumbs up button and get loud down below. Let me know what y'all thought about this episode. Am I off base, or do you agree with me? Alrighty, guys, again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And hopefully in episode 10, Spencer becomes a better listener. He needs to work on that.